probably a little different. I was a little older when I found out I was pregnant. I was 24, and I was living in a town all by myself. I had no family around. When I first found out I was pregnant, I suspected I was pregnant. I was down in Florida and went to a clinic and had a pregnancy test done and found out I was pregnant. And I was suspected that I was, and I think I spent the day in shock and maybe not shock. I was just, it's like, wow, this is a reality. I really am pregnant. Like, wow, well, what now? And I remember I cried a lot, and I didn't want to tell anyone that I was pregnant, and I wasn't going to see the father for a few weeks, it was actually. So I kind of was pregnant all by myself, figuring out if I should take vitamins or what I should do or what I should do. I initially thought that the father would be involved and we would probably get married and have this child, and that's what I originally thought. And then when it became obvious that that wasn't going to happen, that the father wasn't going to be involved either in my life or the child's life, then I did spend some time thinking about abortion. Actually, one day, about had a nervous breakdown. It was, even now I could get emotional thinking about it. It was probably one of the hardest days of my life. That was, so then it went from, that was just not an option. I just could not. There was no doubt in my mind that what I had was a child. And it was just not an option to get rid of that child. Then I had, a pregnancy to deal with, and what do I do with this pregnancy? And I think I probably spent a lot of time thinking, well, I don't know, it was very difficult deciding if I was in a position where I could parent a child or if I was not in a position to parent a child. I wanted, of course, to be actively parenting the child. Well, I finally told him, and he was like, great, that's great. Well, yeah, we'll get married. Because we had always talked about, moving forward in our relationship, and yeah, that's great. Well, be a family. And he kept saying that, but it never materialized, never went forward till I was able to say, you know what, this is on me. He's not going to come through. So I'm going to have to deal with this on my own. And he just kind of slid out of the picture and didn't, never took any active role. Never denied the pregnancy, didn't deny paternity, but did not take any active role. Some financial support, would have been nice. I was not a Christian at the time that I became pregnant. I became a Christian through the process and coming face to face with my sins and who Christ was and what He did for me. And that was when I became a Christian, and that was awesome. And the whole thing about the father, and I say it would have been nice to have him help me financially. It would have been nice, but what happened was he gave me a small sum of money to, at one point, stuck some money in my mailbox, and at the time, I was a little resentful that I didn't get more help financially, but when it was all said and done, I was able to get help through an agency with my medical bills, And the only part that wasn't covered was that small little bit that he did contribute. So my needs were met a little bit by him, just a little bit, financially, but mostly by the Lord. I mean, there was a lot that I could have got from him. Just any kind of emotional support would have been great. Any kind of support whatsoever. I was very alone, very, very alone. I had no family in town, and I was very alone. It would have been nice to have any kind of support. When I was a young girl, I went to church with a local church here, and I went with a gal, and it was a great church, and I really liked it. And she ended up dying unexpectedly when we were in 9th grade. And that was very difficult. She had become a Christian, but I actually made a conscious decision at that point in time to turn away from the Lord. But the funny thing is that as I was going through this relationship that wasn't good and finding myself in this unplanned pregnancy, I started running into the pastor from that church. And just to make a long story short, one day I was at the hospital, and well, actually, the day that I thought about having an abortion and about having a nervous breakdown, I wanted to call him. I thought he would be a good person to call. Who do you call? You need help? I think I'll call him. I literally could not pick up the phone and ask for help. It was a hard thing for me to do, to pick up the phone. I had to be very independent. Had lived on my own since I was 17, so made a lot of bad choices, but could not pick up the phone to call him. So I was at the hospital visiting a friend, and I turned the corner, and there he was, and I said, "Oh, I wanted to call you today." And he said, "Why don't you come to my office tomorrow about noon?" And he was gone. And I was like, okay. And so I went there, and he presented the gospel to me, and the veil fell, and I could see myself and all my sinful nature, and accepted the Lord. and that was that. So I went through with the pregnancy, realizing that I had to do something. I either had to raise the child, or I had to release the child for adoption. I do remember, though, when I was first approached about open adoption, and they said, this was on the video, it's like, okay, so I carry this baby for 9 months, and I go to the hospital, and I have it, and then I have it at the hospital, and then I just give it away? Like, yeah, right, like... Yeah, no, I don't think so. Yeah. But that's exactly what I ended up doing. Yeah. In order to make that decision, it was very difficult. I can remember clearly and distinctly. Remember, this was 33 years ago. I have no concept in my mind how I'm going to raise this child as a single woman, living by myself with no family in town, and a waitress career. I had no concept of how I would do that. I looked into welfare, and that didn't seem to be an option. It seemed to be a trap as opposed to an option. And so I either had to raise this child myself with the limitations that I had, or release it for adoption. Neither one seemed a possibility. So what I did one night, I spent the whole night with the Lord, up all night long, praying and seeking out the Lord's will. And it was actually the Lord that made the decision. And it's never been an easy decision, but I have never regretted my decision. Never. So that's, when the Lord makes your decision, it's usually a good one. Yeah. And I would say that the biggest reason, there was a lot of little reasons, but the biggest reason that I actually wanted, that I went with adoption, is that I wanted my son to have a family. I wanted him to have a mother. I specifically wanted him to have a father. I think a mother-father relationship is a very important thing, and I don't think it's to be taken lightly, and I don't think a single parent home can work, but I wanted my child to have a mother and a father. One of the things that really kept me going through the pregnancy and afterwards was, as hard as it was, maybe emotionally, at least I didn't have an abortion. That was just one of those things, and even now, 33 years later, it can be very emotional, but to think that just at a whim, because it wouldn't be convenient for me. And now he's alive, and he's 33, and he's got a great wife, and he's got a great son, and he's a great guy. So that has always been something. And then I kept a journal after he was born to help me deal with some of the emotions that I was feeling. And I kind of perused it a little bit before this interview. And one of the things that I remember and really does stick out is the amount of love that came about because of the decision that I made to go ahead through this pregnancy and to not terminate it. The amount of love that I was able to experience. I was able to love my child. I've been able to love my child from the day one. His parents love him. His wife obviously loves him. His child loves him. And he's got a huge extended family, and he's a great guy. Sometimes in life you mess up, but then you have to go forward making the right decision. There's no option. You have to do. Sometimes in life, you just have to do the hard stuff. Mm-hmm. That's just all there is to it. It's not easy. It's never been easy. But one of the things I was thinking about as I was coming is that I now have grown children that I did birth, and they have since moved out of the house. And at some point, we all have to give up our children. It doesn't matter. Our children are only ours for a short amount of time, and we always have to give them up. And I gave up one quite a bit sooner than I gave up the others. But I've had to let them go in the same way that I had to let him go. It is just a matter of parenting. You have to let your kids go. You have to do what's right for them, what's best for them.